It's QPR's first midweek championship clash of the season under the Loftus Road lights on Wednesday night, with 22nd place Oxford United the next to visit. So I caught up with returning Yellows fan Joe Citrone about their slow start to the season, their latest performance away at Sheffield United, and the players that could cause Rangers problems. If you're new to the channel, I'm Connor aka Hoopser, and I cover all things QPR, so if you enjoy this match preview and you'd like to see more, please make sure you hit like and subscribe. Joe, thank you so much for joining me for another QPR versus Oxford United preview. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. I appreciate you jumping on once again. It's been a tough start to the season for the Yellows, 4 losses, 2 draws and a win, though your form did have an uptick before Saturday's 1-0 loss at Sheffield United, with back-to-back 2-2 draws at home to Coventry and Leicester, ahead of a 3-1 win away at Bristol City. What have you made of the start to the season?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think you sort of subbed it up pretty perfectly. It's been a bit of a mixed bag. I think we started the season really, like the first couple of games, really poor. We got beat off Pompey in the first game of the season. We got beat at Birmingham and Hull, and I'm thinking this is going to be a long season ahead, and really the problems from last season, in terms of creativity and not really having much of a plan going forward, was still sort of hanging over from last season, which was a big frustration. But like you said, like we picked up, and actually those 3 games, Leicester, Coventry, Bristol City in particular, obviously our first win, some of the best football we've played under Rowett, I'd say, in terms of an attacking sense. Creating chances, getting ourselves in good positions, having more possession than the opposition, which was something that was just unheard of last season under Rowett. And then obviously, as soon as you start to get your hopes up and your expectations start to grow a little bit, you get knocked back. Get knocked back. That's the way it is at sometimes in football. And I think anybody could see that result on Saturday coming a mile off. Sheffield United lost every game. Old manager coming back. It was written, so it wasn't necessarily a big shock, but still a bit of a frustration that we crept back into a few bad old habits. So it would be interesting to see how we go on Wednesday night against QPR, obviously. But yeah, it's hard to see what version of us is going to turn up, because there was a really promising few performances before Saturday, and then it just felt like we were creeping back into old habits a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, 5 points from 3 sides in the current top 5 suggests there is some fight in this Oxford United side and ability to compete with some of the top teams. You were obviously on the receiving end of Sheffield United's new manager bounce, as you've just said. So how was that performance? Was it a case of, yeah, the odds were always stacked against you? Obviously, it's quite a contrast to the 3-1 win at Bristol City the weekend before.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the frustrating things really is we played pretty well in the first half. I think there wasn't necessarily that many clear-cut chances, a bit scrappy, but we definitely had the better of it in the first half. And actually, for a fair bit of the second half, we looked okay as well, in terms of, we were the ones forcing the issue. And it was a classic away performance from Sheffield United. They were organised, they were, pressing high up, they were aggressive, and they nicked their goal and they sat on it. And that's basically exactly what they needed under their current in their current circumstances. That does them the world of good. That's all they needed was the points, and they got it. So yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily hitting the panic button from our point of view, in the way that it was maybe some of the earlier performances in the season where we really looked miles off it. There were some promising things, but yeah, frustrating to not get a result at the end of it, considering that, like I said, the first half we looked possibly the better of the 2 teams. If you look at the stats, the stats are really, other than the scoreline, are basically all in our favour. So a bit frustrating, but like I said, I could see it coming a mile off, so not a massive shock. But frustrating that we just crept back into bad habits. We were sort of bringing on Will Volks to launch long throws into the box, which was basically our only strategy last season, and we're already sort of relying on that again. It's like, God, I thought we'd moved past that a little bit. So, like I said, a bit of frustration, but I think we're on the right path. Like, fingers crossed. But we're probably just, in all honesty, we're probably just not good enough to be a consistent team in the Championship. We're going to be scrapping. We're going to be, 1 week good, 1 week bad. That's basically us this season, I think. But hopefully, we're going to see the good version of us off the back of the bad version on Saturday.
Tottenham loanee Will Lancashire is top goal scorer with 3 goals so far. Who else can cause Rangers problems on Wednesday night?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Will's had a good start up front, proper old school number 9. Good to see, physical presence, hold the ball up, and obviously knows where the back of the net is. But yeah, I mean, the person everyone's been raving about is Brian de Keersmaker, who's the Belgian midfielder we got from Holland in the summer, who looks a class above everything else we've got. I mean, really, baffling how we've been able to convince him to sign for us. I don't know what happened there, but I'm glad he did, because he looks like a proper midfield player, proper player. And yeah, he looks like a cut above midfield player with an unbelievable range of passing. And yeah, depending on the sort of form you get some of the forward players in, it kind of depends. I mean, we've brought this guy in from this Bulgarian player we've got in from Lamel in Belgium, I think, who looks, Philip Krastev, who looks, tricky, looks skillful, maybe lacking a bit of end product, which kind of is the story of our wingers in terms of like Sariki Dembele, Plaqueta. You never know what you're going to get from him. Jesus, I mean, he scored an absolute screamer against Bristol City, and then he'll stick the place out the next game. It's just he's that kind of player. So there's a few players to look out for. I think, to be honest, our man of the match on Saturday was Brodie Spencer, I think, who we've got from Huddersfield, who's a really competent defender, who's come in and has helped shore things up at the back, because we were leaking goals earlier in the season. But yeah, from a forward point of view, obviously Will Lancashire, Nick Prelec, who's come in, another player from overseas we've got, looks pretty handy. So there's a few options, actually. Like I said, I think actually our summer window, my criticisms will probably be more what we didn't do rather than what we did do so far. Like, I think in terms of the players we brought in, we've actually brought in some pretty good ones, I think. Maybe still lacking in one or two areas that we could have strengthened, maybe should have. But the players we brought in actually have made us better. Like, all of those players, most of them are new signings, which is a promising thing this early in the season.
I mean, you mentioned the defence has tightened up over the last couple of games. So where do you think QPR might have some joy?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I said, we were leaking goals early in the season. It was, you think of a Gary Rowett team in the Championship, you think of a team that's solid. I think it's a team that's organised. We weren't really any of those things early in the season. But, I think honestly the thing that has been costing us in recent weeks are just silly mistakes. Loose back passes. If you look back through some of our goals that we've conceded, they're not good goals, a lot of them. The only one that I can think of that was a great goal was Mehmeti blasting one in from 25 yards against Bristol City. But other than that, they're loose balls, they're back passes that are bad. So, we may end, unfortunately, we may end up sort of gift wrapping you a few chances, unfortunately, how we're playing. But, honestly, there's not really a big weak link in the team. It's just, I think it just depends what version of us turns up. I mean, honestly, if the version that turns up on Wednesday that turned up against Bristol City, we'll give a good game. We played really well. We played really well in the Leicester game. We played really well in the Coventry game. And those are against good sides who, most people would have predicted to be up there. All three of those teams, really. And we gave a good account of ourselves, just whether we can do it in the games that people expect us to get points in, because when there's no expectation, we seem to turn up and cause a surprise. When we suddenly start to have expectation, we suddenly start to think, well, QPR is a game we might get points in. We've got Watford coming up after that. We think, well, that's surely, they've struggled at the start of the season. Those are the games we need the points and we need to deliver. And when the expectation's on, that's when we need to deliver. And if we can't do that, then it's going to be a struggle. But, it's these next few games before the international break are going to be really key, I think.
Last year's clash at Loftus Road, also on a Wednesday night, produced one of the poorest first halves of football I've seen at home in many years, ahead of a second half Samfield brace. So to round us off, let's get your score prediction for this Wednesday.
It's so difficult, honestly. It really is. It really is hard to predict us at the moment. I'd like to be positive and say I think actually a point on the road at this stage would not be the worst result in the world. I'll go for a 1-1. We haven't kept a clean sheet this season, so I'm not necessarily banking on us doing that against players like Kone and those kind of guys keeping a clean sheet this game. But I'd like to think we'll show a better version of ourselves. The kind of team that turned up against Bristol City and Coventry and Leicester, and then we might give ourselves a good chance again coming away with something. So I'll go 1-1. I'll try and be positive for once.
Thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate you coming on once again, and all the best for the rest of the season after Wednesday night.
Cheers, mate. You too.
Thanks so much to Joe once again for joining me for this preview. Make sure you give him a follow on Twitter via the link down in the description. Despite being sat at different ends of the table, I think there will be a few bits that rang true to Rangers fans from what Joe said after our performance at the weekend, particularly around not knowing exactly which version of his team is going to turn up. Although Sheffield Wednesday's predicament is completely different, we are immediately playing another team in the bottom three, and like Joe was saying about Oxford, these are the teams that QPR traditionally struggle against much more so than upper table opposition. Now that does of course work both for and against us. Aside from their impressive sole 3-1 win at Bristol City, United's 3 other trips away from home in the league so far this season have ended in defeat, with good draws against both Coventry and Leicester taking place at the Kassam. Although that bodes well for QPR at Loftus Road, the point ultimately is that Rangers can't go into this one underestimating Oxford, especially with them having added a few ball players to the equation compared to last season. Stefan's triple substitution at half-time on Saturday does suggest we won't see the same starting 11 for the 4th game running. Changes up top and the wing presumably the most likely ahead of a tough trip to Bristol City 3 days later. So let's round off with a score prediction. I think this side will want to right some wrongs after the weekend, and we're quietly building a more decent home record at Loftus Road after several years of neglect. So for the 2nd game running, I'm going to back us for a 2-1 win. What about you? What's your score prediction? I'd love to hear your own in the comments down below. Thank you so much for tuning in as ever. If you're new to Hoopsa, you've enjoyed this match preview and you want to see more QPR content, please consider hitting like and subscribe, and maybe I'll see you next time for my Oxford United match reaction. Come on, you Rs.